Hello, everybody. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you do it, download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. I want to jump past the opening, David. I'm so excited about watching some games that actually happened. And really, honestly, there was a lot of really interesting stuff going on. And I was going to say, maybe I'll put something together, one thing for David and I to talk about, that's exciting, a hook, to start the show. And I couldn't narrow it down. So I came up with six, and and I think each of the six is a compelling story and a great, object for discussion. I came up as the number one story. You can disagree or agree. For me, it was the injury to the running back of the Montreal Alouettes, William Stanback.
Yeah, a significant injury, right? If it was just he left the
Six
game or not,
gamer for now, right?
right, and he's getting surgery on the ankle, like that's I hate to say, but given his position, a surgery like that to the ankle, it's not good for arguably. I wouldn't say arguably, he is the best running back in the league, so it's not good for Montreal because they desperately need uh stand back. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they kind of pull through without him there.
And then the connective tissue of the owner putting undue pressure on the organization right after game one, saying, If we're not in a good place halfway through the season, there's going to be changes." What? So it's tough. This William Stanback injury. That's why I made it number one, to be honest with you, because it impacts the franchise the most out of everything that we saw this past weekend. And there's been some stuff that's interesting to talk about.
No, and I mean, we've always said I'm a big fan of Kahari Jones. I feel like he's the type of coach that the CFL needs. Someone
Yeah.
that's pushing the envelope a little bit. I understand that he was there before the new owner and before the new GM was brought in. So sometimes they like to bring, the GM wants to bring in
Yep.
his own guy, but you can't argue with what the Alouettes have done since Kahari Jones has taken over. That team was, unfortunately, they they were in no man's land as a franchise. They just we didn't know what the team could do to get themselves back on track. They bring in Kahari Jones and they became a respectable team.
Can we rewind and remind people how he became the head coach? The original head coach was fired the week of the season starting.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
Remember?
He was literally thrown
Less than a week.
I told like you have to give like I don't know how you don't give Kari Jones a little bit of credit for that. And if you're thinking about making a move, you kind of have to think. I always think of, if you're making a move, you're making it because you have somebody better in mind. Who's better right now than Kahari Jones, realistically?
Well, he's got a bookend in Hamilton. They're the same guy, in my opinion. They're the same guy, in my opinion. Hamilton's coached by the same kind of thinking, a player's thinking out the box coach, out of the box. So, really good. Okay, I digressed a little bit there, but that's okay. The next story would have been the most exciting story if William Stanback hadn't been injured and the owner said what he said. And that is, of course, BC's Nathan Rourke, 42-6 at halftime. We haven't seen 42 points by a team very often the past few years. We saw it in halftime. Amazing. And he made it look easy.
Yeah, I think that was the part of it, right? The last time I saw a team play like that, it was the Argos home opener where they were the receiving end of the
Yeah.
butt whooping from Hamilton. That's what it reminded me of. It's just like, is this supposed to, it's not supposed to be that easy. I hope somebody's supposed to tell the players that. For BC, I think that's what it was. It wasn't just how many points they scored, it was how they did it. It was all in the first half too. Like, My goodness, they couldn't. I don't know how Chris Jones didn't just throw down the clipboard and walk out of the game.
The Elks could not do anything right. They were snake bit. We saw a couple of we saw an interception that an identical play to how the Grey Cup was won by Winnipeg. The tip, the bounce, the tip in the air, caught. Three players touch it, it ends up an interception. So yeah, not that BC. Hey, listen, BC was full value for that, and I want to again rewind a little bit. Remember that first press conference we had when we didn't know for sure what was going to happen after Riley retired, and we sat, and with the GM and the coach of the BC Lions, and they said with a very straight face, and they were serious. We have our two quarterbacks, and they were going with two Canadian quarterbacks. Now, we weren't sitting beside each other. We're in our own locations, so I can't say we looked at each other, but I think emotionally we looked at each other. I'm not saying we talked about this. I'm just guessing. I feel this way. I feel like we looked at each other and went, did he really say that? He's going to go with two Canadian? Really?
Yeah, it was always like I kept on saying they need to get a veteran in there. They need to get someone to work with these younger guys.
That's why we're not the head coach of the BC Lions.
This is why we're not the head coach or the
Anywhere.
general manager of the BC Lions. In all fairness, they did bring in Antonio Pipkin.
Yes, they did bring him in, and
So we
he
were
will.
somewhat right. It's just not in the way that we expected it to be.
Yeah, it was basically they got a gift, right? An opportunity arose, and what I really like about, and I don't know, it just might be a lot of little things that happened that helped that team get to where it went. I'll even go as far as saying that Pipkin thing helps motivate the two quarterbacks that are the guys that they originally wanted. Little bit of pressure, little keeping them honest, and I think a real contributing factor was the Republic. No, spit it out, Frank. Little mini concert. What they did that day, the stadium an hour before the game was rocking. I mean, that's the way you promote the game, and then it was like the player said, "Oh yeah, well, challenge accepted."
Yeah, they needed. We always said that what makes football such a different sport than any other ones. It's once a week, so you got to put all your effort into that one day. People make it, especially when it's a weekend game. You make it so that that's your day. It's almost like you're spending the whole day out, right? That is
Yeah,
what you're
yeah,
doing
yeah,
that
yeah.
day.
You make
You
a
have
very
to
valid
make
point.
the experience. They can't really tailgate in BC because it's harder to tailgate in Canada. We get that. But there are ways you can add to the atmosphere. And I think that's what it was that BC didn't just say, all right, we're gonna get a bunch of people to come to the game. It's like, what can we do to make sure that the experience is memorable? What can they take from the experience? Not just the game, but what they experienced there, right? How many families will say, you know what, we can do this a few more times this year. Let's get the kids going a bit more. Younger people who are looking for things to do after they were cooped up inside for 2 years. Oh, you know what? Maybe I'll go to a few Lions games now. They look like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You need to do something like that. You need to leave the best impression as possible.
Now, and that group was not, a group that's history. They're doing the theme song from the new. What's that kid's name? That actor, that guy in the airplane. What's his name?
Are you talking about Tom Cruise?
Oh yeah, that guy. That's him. That guy
The young guy.
doing that movie. This little movie that
That
he's
little
doing.
movie about
That little movie that he's doing.
airplanes where they
Breaking
actually
all kinds
are
of
flying
box
in the air.
office records.
Just a quick aside, they're actually flying in those airplanes. It's
Absolutely, they are. I
I
get
watched
that
an
too.
incredible movie.
Uh,
I said,
and it and the band that sings does the theme song was at BC Place. So you're talking high profile, big name. And I think every community has to figure out what it is that'll pull in the young crowd. And I think in BC, music's a great choice. One of the greatest Grey Cups to be played, one of the best halftime shows was in BC. They did an incredible job. And whenever they have the Grey Cup, they've done Brian Adams, they've done a marvelous job of leading the game with a lot of excitement. And that's what the teams in the Canadian Football League have to do. They have to figure out a way to make the game an event and make the event attractive to younger fans. That's what has to happen. And I think that's what BC established. That's what I think ownership did there. That was a real big commitment to, putting on a show. And they did. And man, was the cherry on top the game or what? I mean, 42-6. You've got probably the greatest hope of a Canadian quarterback in a very long time, among many. I mean, we watched a game where two, count them, not one, two Canadian quarterbacks scored a touchdown on the same team. And then it added a little touch, a Canadian quarterback with a future for Edmonton on the other side. So, this was the worst competed game. I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't say worse. That's such a heavy. It was the least compelling game as far as the score was concerned. But it had so much other stuff going on, which is fantastic because that's what you want. You want to make it more than the game.
Exactly. And I'm just looking right now at the BC Lions Twitter page. Their next game, they're doing a bunch of giveaways for that one
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Diversity is strength night.
Yeah, they got a bye week next.
I know.
After that, they got a bye week next.
uh,
Hopefully they can hang on to the excitement. That's that's the tough part. All right, number 4. So that's 3. Stand back 1, Nathan Rourke, and of course having such a great game with BC. 2, the Canadian quarterbacks, 3-1 game, and now 4. James, we're staying in BC, by the way. James Butler scored 4 TDs all year. Last year he had 3.
all year last year, William Stanback had 3 on the ground.
There you go.
I always say, and I James Wilder Jr. kind of when he was in Toronto, we kind of talked about this and how, man, you running back sometimes will put a lot to get into the end zone, and only to have the quarterback come in and take that touchdown from you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he had 2 on the ground and 2 receiving in the game. And I'm you know what? For me, I was always wondering, should the 1-yard scramble really be a thing, like at the goal line? Like, shouldn't you just try to get into the running back's hand? And I also think about, it's like an old school football play to just try to get that 1-yard QB sneak, and even in the NFL, you're seeing it too. I also just like the fact that, a running back does a lot of work to try and get into the end zone.
Mm.
So give him that opportunity to score. They like to score. Quarterbacks get their opportunities many times in the game. Let the running back get his opportunity for a little bit of glory as well.
But we also know the reason that doesn't happen is that there's an exchange that isn't necessary, which is an opportunity for a dropped ball and or more time for the defense to take you down. So, until I guess I mean, how do we go back to trusting running backs when, essentially that's what we're talking about here? Not that they can't be trusted. It's that the situation dictates, the circumstances and unfortunately statistics, numbers, odds, all that stuff kicks in and so quarterbacks get to do it. And it's affected what the quarterback looks like beyond, the other quarterback after the number 1 quarterback. So,
Well, I will say this: Michael O'Connor would not have gone into the game. I mean, he would have gone into the game later, but he might not get that opportunity to see the field if he wasn't doing those
but
scramble
absolutely.
plays either.
For sure, for sure. But regardless, James Butler, an incredible first game. Man, did he have a breakout game, and he looked awesome. We'll see if that's just something that what's going to be tough now is following that up, right? For James Butler, he's going to have to also figure out, how to avoid the defenses now that are going to key on him, and that's what makes a great running back, right? It's about adjustments, it's about change of direction in more ways than one, and we'll see how he can do that.
I think that's why I always marvel at William Stanback, because he knows every team is trying to stop him, and that does not change his approach. He is still
Absolutely.
gonna find a way, either through finding a hole or just run through you. He is going to find a way. That's what always made him a great running back, and that's why I'm also just so. It was always so tough to see that he went down there. But yeah, no, James Butler. I said BC. What helps a young quarterback? You got a good running back for him, so he doesn't have to do it all.
And a good
Jason
offensive
Warwick
line.
only threw it 29 times, and they had the ball a lot. Like
Yep.
Edmonton was giving the ball away. They weren't exactly trying to keep it. I
Yeah, it
think
sure seemed
BC
that
had
way.
34-49 of time of possession. Edmonton had 25.
Yeah.
That's a huge disparity in time of possession.
Another story for me was in watching the game in Saskatchewan at Mosaic, and I'm not concerned, but I noticed something I'd never seen since 2017 when they opened Mosaic. I saw empty seats, a smattering of them everywhere, and I had a friend message me, and he said, "Frank, I saw what you said. There's also the issue with how big the province is, and people come from all around the province, and also the ticket prices have gone a little bit high, and so it's still like I said, this is the place where the Grey Cup's going to be played this year. So I'm hoping that gets squared away, and there's nothing I enjoy more than watching a full house in a great stadium, and you've got a great history there with the Saskatchewan Roughrider fans. Rider pride is real, and it just like I said, I have a soft spot for them. And when I saw the empty seats, it concerned me. How do you feel about it?
I read somewhere that apparently about 4,000 of the empty the seat 4,000 of the paying customers didn't even make the trip in some
Right.
cases. I think there is something to be said about the raising of gas prices, people
Yes.
now thinking otherwise about driving the games. And this is where I'm not concerned right now for Saskatchewan. I mean, home opener, you want as many people as
Yeah,
possible. I
absolutely.
totally get that. For me, this is also just a lesson in that the community teams rely a lot on those ticket sales.
Right.
And this is where I said that you gotta, as a league, have to continuously think about other ways to bring in that revenue, because if your one source gets impacted by global pandemic, now economic hardships right now,
Yep.
you have to be able to find a way to thrive in those find a way to get better, or find a way to help to ease that burden a bit. And it's disappointing for the Rough Riders, but I think 29,000 is still, for paid 29,000
Yeah.
is still pretty good. Even few, let's say even 25,000, that's my benchmark.
I
20,
don't think there's a team in the league that would thumb their nose at 29,000.
no, I mean, look at Calgary. I mean, we're at Calgary
Oh, I
21,
know. I got a message from him. He says, "You think Saskatchewan's bad?" I went, "What?" He said, "Oh, Calgary." He just couldn't. It bothered him just to watch the game and
right?
to see
That
the way.
that was your CFL season opener.
I,
That was your season opening game. I also kind of think Winnipeg should have had the season opening game because they are the defending champions, my opinion. But yeah, for that to be your season opening game and have to see that empty, it was a fantastic game. But
Great game, two great teams,
right, but to
and we'll
see
talk
it,
about it later.
but for to like look, we're here in Toronto. We hear it all the time about attendance,
Ugh.
right? And look at what Calgary. If Calgary is doing that bad, if Saskatchewan's doing that bad, a little concerned about what Thursday is going to look like for the Argos.
It's a good question and a real concern. The one thing that the Argos should have on their side, that the two cities we just talked about, Calgary and Saskatchewan, and I think this is pretty true of all the teams in the West. Their fan base is stretched, sprawls over a large area, right? And what my buddy told me when he sent me the message about Regina, he says some people have to spend, a lot of the people, not some people, a lot of the people have to spend $100 in gas, just $100 in gas to get back and forth, right? So when the gas prices are doubling, this is what's going to happen, right? It's going to be tough, the Canadian Football League has always been, and God, it bothers me that they're always on the cusp of a problem because they're like the canary in the mine, right? If there's economic problems, they seem to always be the first one to take it on the chin, which it's terrible. You know, when it comes to whatever else is going wrong, it seems like the Canadian Football League just automatically takes it on the chin. What I'm hoping here is that these games, the way they were played this weekend, we'll see more of that in week 2, and I think it'll be promising. We've got some really interesting games to be played, and hopefully that'll help straighten things out. And the other thing is that let's not make a big deal out of 1 week. Let's let it roll a little bit before we start presuming things are in a bad way. I'd rather not assume things are going to be bad, because if they're going to be bad, we'll be made aware of it soon enough. Let's have some hope and rely mostly on the excitement of great young Canadian quarterbacks. You know, talk about how major injuries like we saw this weekend with Stanback, how that'll affect a team. And let's watch what happens in each and every game, because we were treated to, as I said, every game was interesting. 3 of them were competitive, and one, even though it was a blowout, it had a lot of interest in it. It was a very interesting game. So why don't we do that? And we can start, I guess.
We talked about the BC game, so maybe
A little, yeah, we did a little bit. You're right. Okay, so just to review the BC game, well, we'll start with Montreal and Calgary. You
yeah,
talked about
they were the opener.
um, and Montreal and Calgary. Montreal's had a bit of a history in being tough on Calgary, even when Montreal a few years ago were a little less than the best that they've been. They've been a problem for Calgary, and they went in my opinion, to Calgary, and I gave them a good shot to beat Calgary, and that's in spite of the fact that both you and I, 2 teams that we've talked about this season that we expect to improve immensely. One is this Calgary team, and we said that about Ottawa as well. 2 teams that we like what they did in the offseason and how they approached the upcoming season. The Alouettes to make this game 30-27 and make it as close as they did, they had to play really well, because Calgary was Calgary that we've expected, that we've seen in the preseason, and with the feeling that we got about this team wants to make a comeback, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the fact that Kadeem Carey is carrying over, I used that pun there. He's carrying over his performance from last year, bringing it into this season. So you got that dependable running back, dual running back. He can catch the
Yep.
ball, he can run the ball. Um, their defense too, right? Making plays. They had 2 interceptions, key interceptions to get them make the field short. Rene Paredes still, giving Calgary the points they need when they need it. And I think like this game was very close, and I think really what it came down to was turnovers. It came down to turnovers in the end, because when you're just a matter of 3 points 3 points away from tying it, usually it's the one possession that takes the cake. And I think Vernon Adams would like that third quarterback. I think he even said it himself. It was not a good quarter for him. And I also was very impressed with what I saw from Vernon Adams too, right? He had those interceptions, but he made up for it with that one touchdown that he ran himself. That's a superstar play right there. And for Calgary, Bo Levi Mitchell, ugh, I don't know. I'm he left the game with what didn't look like a serious injury, but it was serious enough that they didn't even think that he could go back in it. And then luckily Jake Mayer got them down the field to get that field goal that they needed. But
Yep.
Calgary's been is done well, but there's still some things that I think are need to be settled before I can really truly give them the crown of one of those top teams in the West.
The one thing we can't get away from is Bo Levi's health. It seems that keeps becoming an issue, and he was seen after the game in a walking boot. That's not a good a good sign, but it's not a guarantee of a problem, a
Yeah, he
long
said his
term one.
ankle is doing better now, but that's still a concern.
Yeah, treatment and all that stuff, and painkillers, and they could do stuff like that. Vernon Adams needs to be a star for Montreal to succeed and for him to be a good quarterback. He is more than capable of making big plays. He's done it numerous times, and he'll continue to do that. But he does have an issue with throwing interceptions, and ball security is a big deal. Is a big deal. We talk about this. This is one of my pet peeves when it comes to quarterbacks. Interceptions. Quarterbacks just in the Canadian Football League can't do that. It just can't happen. And I don't know. Is it why does it happen? Is it that there's not enough time for quarterbacks to get to know the receivers? Is it the game plans? Offer opportunities for quarterbacks to make bad judgments. Eating the ball is a tough thing to do when you're an aggressive player like Adams.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of questions about where how this season goes because he's got Trevor Harris right behind him, right? You know, I feel like it's a good thing to push him, but it's also one where it's like he's going to be constantly looking over his shoulder, right? When's the coach going to give him the yank?
Yeah, where's the balance of
Yeah,
security and playing to your ability and worrying about your first mistake?
but that performance he gave was a winning performance in my opinion.
Mhm. You're
It was
right.
just that really he was one mistake away from having helping Montreal win that game. And I think the other benefit too, Eugene Lewis. Boy, am I impressed with him. He continues to be the playmaking receiver that Montreal has needed for so many years. And he broke out a little bit in 2019. And I think that's a lot. That symmetry has allowed it to continue. Like last year was a good year for him. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he's among one of the leaders in receiving yards.
Yeah, and now that they've walked away from B.J. Cunningham, you
Mhm.
know he was a mainstay with Montreal. Wenicky, they've got some receivers. They needed to make some room. There's only one ball, and it can only be tossed to one player at a time. So, you got to make a decision. There's contracts and there's ability and there's balance. And Montreal has made a decision. They're going to go with the young receivers. The king now is Lewis, where B.J. Cunningham used to be the go-to guy. Now Eugene Lewis is Gino's the go-to guy, and I like J.R. White as well. They've got a nice little receiving core. They've got a really good quarterback. Yeah, I'm impressed by them, and they could have won that game. Calgary deserved the victory, but Montreal was there.
I also just think too, Vernon Adams. One thing maybe I'll nitpick a little bit is he just has to be a little bit more accurate with his passes. He's like he was below 60%. I think in the CFL you got to be over 60 or over. In my just that's just a thing to nitpick on my part.
Mm.
But what he doesn't do through the air, he does through his legs as well. So also I'll give a little shout out when Stanback did leave the game. His backup Canadian boy, Deshron Antwi,
Yep.
he came in and there was no
That first touch.
for 70 yards, like 70 yards, and he finished with 98.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think if you're Montreal, you're hoping that okay, we might have a guy that can step in and make sure that we don't lose out on what William Stanback can do for us. I know they signed another running back because you need to sign another one after you lose one. So yeah, I'm just curious to see how this injury will change their game plan going forward.
On the defensive side of the ball, they made a trade for Cameron Judge. He led the defense with 6 tackles.
Yeah, for Calgary, I think they always need that linebacker to kind of stabilize things, but they're always a well-rounded defense, right? They always
Always.
have a good pass rush. They have a good linebacking core and a good defensive back positional, but they're not like we're really good at one thing. They're a well-rounded
They're a
team.
team defense by
They're a team
definition.
defense.
They
But
really are.
Cameron Judge, yeah, leading the way. I know a lot of people were wondering what happened to him last year in Toronto. Couldn't really tell you. I know injuries played a factor. He wasn't healthy at times. But I think if you get a healthy Cameron Judge, that's going to make a big difference in a defense like Calgary's.
Yeah, and he might just play better in the West. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Um, since we mentioned Cameron Judge, two defenders for the opposition in Montreal, Trey Watson and Darius Pickett had 7 defensive tackles, so they did real well. And Darius Pickett had one of the interceptions against Bo Levi Mitchell. So a couple of defensive leaders. It's always easy to talk about the offense, but in this game, a really good game, an enjoyable game, 30-27 for Calgary. The old veteran Paredes wins the game on a field goal. Is this a high-scoring game? Is this a low-scoring game? We're looking for a little more scoring, right, David?
Just a tad bit. Yep. Maybe fewer field goals, more touchdowns. Some of
Yeah,
these.
we are seeing a lot of field goals, and low scoring games. But sometimes even low scoring games have some great plays. I guess that brings us to the next game, and that of course is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers playing at home on Banner Night. Yes, back to back Grey Cup celebrated. And what team came in is Ottawa, the team that we've celebrated as probably one of the most improved teams in the Canadian Football League. I think David, this game proved that they are.
It sure looks that way. Defensively, they still remain a team that I say you cannot sleep on.
Nope.
They can make plays on that defense on the defensive side of the ball. Again, though, you throw for 380 yards. You only get one touchdown. That's not
Another one of my
Paul.
pet
That's not Paul Lapalisse. I'm guarantee Paul Lapalisse was probably thrilled at the fact that his quarterback first game with the new team throws for 380 yards, but he's like, can we get more than one touchdown?
Well, Zach Caleros only threw one. So, you know,
But we
um,
Yeah,
it,
this is true, but we've come to know that with Zach Close. But they got that extra touchdown from Dakota, from Prukop
yeah,
in the game. At least they scored more than one touchdown.
yes. Yes, they did. And in this game, what we saw Jeremiah Mazzoli. You said 380 yards. This guy has a lot to prove. Not to me, not to you, not to Hamilton fans, not to football fans. He has it to prove to himself because I think he's at a point where he wants to show what he can do as much to everybody else, but to himself as well. This guy's had a couple of bad breaks, a couple of tough injuries, tough political issues to deal with, on his team where he had a quarterback that, the fans kind of wanted to see a little bit of, and you can't not believe that, management wanted to see a little more out of, the other quarterback. It was great for him to go with Sean Burke, and Sean Burke knew he was bringing a guy along with him that had a little fire in the belly, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And like the thing I found with this game too is just I had a really hard time. People were saying, "Oh, it's in for a good finish," and I was like, "Did it have a great beginning?" Like,
Yeah.
I found this game a little hard to stay in tune with. Really, the biggest part came at the end when you have Zach
Yeah.
Barrows taken out of the game. I I will say this: that is the gutsiest concussion spotter takeout I have ever seen in all sports. To take a quarterback out late in the game and the team needing the field goal to get the win, and he has to come out, and the team
Oh,
still
he was
wins.
so upset. Thank
And
goodness for Drew Brown, 3
the
for
guy that
3,
I said,
51 yards,
the guy
enough for a field goal.
he made me eat my words because I said I didn't think he was good enough to be the backup, and he's just like, "I heard you, and I'm gonna raise you a game-winning drive for a field goal."
Yeah. Yeah, he did a great job, and let's be clear, football's not an individual sport. Individuals can get a lot of credit, but it's not an individual sport. Drew Brown did his part along with the team. The Winnipeg team is nope, we're not planning on losing this game. They have that, come on. Not only do they have the swagger, they have the game to match the swagger. And they are back-to-back Grey Cup champs. And until somebody takes that title this year, if the team is lucky to do that, and Winnipeg doesn't win, until then, Winnipeg's the best team in the league. You got to beat the best team. Jeremiah Mazzoli proved that he could make some passes. He proved he could march the team down the field. The next thing he has to prove is that he can get them in the end zone, and that's what didn't happen in this game. And that was, I agree with you, the difference between Mazzoli having a successful game or having a good game. He had a good game. It wasn't successful because all the great work and all the accomplishments he had didn't get him where he needed to be, and that's in the end zone.
Right, like you tell any quarterback, "Oh, so a good night for you. Threw for 380 yards." He's yeah, but the team lost. So what does it matter?
Yeah. And then there's the crawling game. I mean, the running game for both teams.
Yeah,
33 yards for Williams.
I'm more surprised on
Delonte.
the Winnipeg part, right?
I
Because
know, 17 yards.
1.7 average. The longest run that Winnipeg had was a 10-yard scramble from Zach Caleros.
Yikes.
That is not the Winnipeg football we have come to know.
Yeah, well, um, there's something to be said for working your way into the lineup. We talked a little earlier about pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
That can be an issue here. Like you can have a great game when there's no pressure on you. The difference between players who are great and players who are good are the players who play well under pressure. And they lost a guy who was a team leader. And so now to fill those giant shoes is not going to be easy because there was more to their number one running back of last year than just running.
Yeah, running, blocking,
Yep, catching.
but also, um, you know, the presence as well, right? You could one thing Winnipeg did really well is they can go with that play action because a lot of teams will bite on the run, knowing that if you're giving the ball to Andrew Harris, you're going to get a lot of eyes on Andrew Harris, and so yeah, I find that I'm curious. Like that's the first game without him. Let's see if somebody can eventually step. But maybe, and let's not forget Hamilton. Hamilton, Ottawa, really good defensive team.
Very
It
good.
is hard to get runs on them. I just remember the Argos struggled to get runs on them. So I think you got to there's got to be a bit of patience. I think if you are Winnipeg, they'll get there. Their offensive line is good enough that they'll figure out a way to make it all work.
Absolutely. And, as much as we talk about that former Hamilton Tiger Cat Mazzoli, there's another former Hamilton Tiger Cat that showed his stuff in that game, and that's Jalen Acklin. 6 receptions on 8 attempts for 143 yards.
I
Yikes. He looked good.
I still remain surprised that Hamilton didn't find a way to keep him because I thought Jalen Acklin.
I thought he was the guy who was going to replace Brandon Banks.
Yeah, you would think
That's who I
so.
thought he was.
Yeah, no, I thought you would think so because he was pretty good for them, last season.
While Brandon was hurt.
Sometimes it just doesn't work out the way you wanted to or expect. I think the big one for me too was, the symmetry, right? You want to keep some continuity with the quarterback and the
They
receiver.
did. They brought the continuity to Ottawa
And
with
that's what Ottawa ended up
Morassutti.
doing, right?
Yeah.
You look at, not just Jalen Acklin, but Darvin Adams.
Yes.
Had to
He looked
remind
good
myself
too.
that Darvin Adams was on Ottawa, and that's a guy it's easy to root for as well, because this is a guy who is he was in Winnipeg. He had some really good seasons in Winnipeg after Toronto let him go, and to see him leave Winnipeg was always surprising. And then seeing what what he did in that first game. He's 32 years old. He's not a young guy anymore, right? He's only got a few. Who knows how many years he has left? I hope he doesn't hear me say that. But you'll see how that now impacts the Ottawa offense. Can they continue this momentum and find a way
I think they can.
to get touchdowns?
That's what they gotta do. And, while we're on the subject of former Ticats, also happens to be a former Ottawa Red Black, Greg Ellingson looked like he fit in pretty good with Winnipeg. You would think that, a veteran, a veteran like him who's a feature guy, right? Making room for him in the lineup might be a little more difficult, but he slid right into that receiving core.
You find way if it's a good player, you find a way to make them work. But Greg Ellison's been around the block so long, and I don't think it matters who. Well, I'm just trying to remember too. Did him and Zach play together in Hamilton? I think they might have.
Yes. Yes, they did.
So
I believe they did.
there is some continuity there. But Greg Ellison again, he followed Trevor Harris to Edmonton. We saw the benefits of that, and then he now gets his shot in Winnipeg. I think that's probably a decent replacement for Darvin Adams, just that dependable guy that can make plays for you. So yeah, I like that. I like that move for Winnipeg. It's good to see that a free agent like that is working out. Is working out for them.
Doesn't always work out that way.
No, but they also need other guys to step up behind him.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
looking at a Nick Dembski, Rashid Bailey. Those are guys I'm expecting a little bit more out of, especially Nick Dembski. I feel like he's a guy that they need to step up in this offense a bit more.
He might have a little trouble getting up for the first games. He's a big play guy, and they needed a big play. They got it elsewhere. When they need it for him, I think they'll get it. So there you go. Ottawa, Winnipeg. Winnipeg wins on their back-to-back Grey Cup banner raising, or exposing, if you will. 1917, good for them. The next game is the one we talked about a little bit in Saskatchewan. We didn't talk about the game. We talked about the attendance, so we don't have to go over that again. The score was 30-13, but I wouldn't call it a 30-13 game, would you? It was a lot closer than that. An interception late. It was desperation attempts by Hamilton, left them open to have a couple of touchdowns scored on them late.
Yeah, 5 field goals from Brett Lawher, probably the best kicker in the CFL, or one of. Maybe Boris Beatty gives them a run for his money there too. For Hamilton, that's a rough first game though. In the new, this is a team that has gone through heartbreak after heartbreak. So you're hoping, let's see if they can, they make all these changes to the front office. Steinauer gets a little more responsibility. Dane Evans is the one that stays after they let Jeremiah Mazzoli go. If you're Hamilton, I think the biggest concern is that offensive line, because Dane Evans got bullied by the Saskatchewan defense.
He sure did.
That was the concerning part for me. I want to see if that's just a one-off game, or are we seeing a Hamilton O-line that's losing a step?
I don't know if I've ever seen twice in a game a quarterback throw a ball into the belly of a defending lineman. Like like not into the hands, into the belly. I don't know if I've ever seen that twice in a game.
It's fascinating because I think um a lot of Hamilton fans have they've always thought that to be a concern for them, and they're a little disappointed that this was kind of left as a box unchecked going into the season.
Yeah.
There's
And
only so
Cody
much you
Cody Fajardo onto the good news side. Cody
yeah.
Fajardo, he little Chris Jones magic, he shot across the bow, if you will. Cody had a good game, 311 yards, TD, and ball security. Accomplished that. No interceptions. And he hit for a good percentage, made some really good plays, ran with his feet. This guy's a complete package, Canadian Football League package. You don't have to send in a second quarterback for him. He can go and run it into the end zone.
Yeah, no, and look, this is a guy that found some motivation from the words of a former coach, right? Or yeah, well, and like Chris Jones, I don't know if you saw the comments. He
Yeah,
he said if that's what Cody Fajardo needs to get himself going, by all means. It was
have at
almost have at it. I think it's a good first start for Saskatchewan. I
they
know
picked up right where they left off last year.
they did. I think that's the perfect way of saying.
Not counting the last game, of course.
But I mean, defensively, you get eight sacks. You get 2 interceptions, 3 fumbles.
Are
Four.
you trying to say they had a good defensive game? Is that what you're
I
intimating?
think their defense, honestly, I think their defense remains the best in the CFL in terms of you better not give them any window to make a play because they will make a play.
And
Uh,
if you look on the other side, the Ticats didn't sack at all Cody Fajardo.
I think they're missing a specific player that went to the enemy territory. That was
Mhm.
the straw that stirred the drink on the defensive side of the ball. Um, that's a tough loss when you lose a guy like Jagger Davis, who is
Yep.
the best pass rusher in the CFL. But they still have. I mean, Hamilton still has a good defense. It's not that they. The one player I wanted to ask you about. Actually, I wanted to also mention Charleston Hughes. First game
Yeah.
back to Saskatchewan, gets a sack. So I think he's feeling pretty good about himself. But Simone Lawrence, that hit on Cody Fajardo.
My problem with that play is the same problem from time to time we have with Simone Lawrence. I'll call what he does a spear, and I'll accept that it's an exaggeration. But it's when his spears are pointing towards the ground at a player who's already on the ground or is soon to be on the ground, and or a player who's already being brought down by a teammate and he's offering a little assistance with his helmet. Um, is that something that he's doing intentionally to hurt the player? I don't know. I can't get inside Simone Lawrence's head. I'm just saying the optics. It's about the optics. So sometimes what he does is people question some of his hits because of the way they look. They don't look right. They don't feel right. There seems to be something wrong with it. I was there when he got the hit on Caleros when Caleros's last
That
game
was
in
a worse hit.
Saskatchewan. It was similar to what we saw. It looked very similar.
Like, what? I totally get in a player's perspective. He's trying to make a play. He is not trying to hurt. I don't think he's trying to hurt the guy, but he sees an opening there, right? And he's not going to. Sometimes football players don't have that mentality to let up. In practice, they're told to go hard or
Yeah,
don't even
agreed.
bother, right? So I can get that part, but it's also you got to have some awareness. You've done it a few times and you've gotten caught a few times. Are you really going to do it again? Um, I'm a little surprised we haven't heard of any.
Hasn't been reviewed or will be reviewed.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. You sometimes the CFL kind of throws those out of nowhere. The fines.
Yeah, what they've done recently, you notice that what they do is they don't really make a big deal announcement. Just go, okay, and then it's sort of like at the bottom of the story, right? And they go, oh, by the way, find, and find. And sometimes it's hard to find the players that have been fined.
Yeah.
So to your point, but here we can't. At some point, this is a tough sport. It's a tough game. We can't assume that a player is trying to hurt another player. We can't assume.
You can't. You
We
can't
can't.
assume intentions at times.
No,
When people try to, it's so
no.
hard to.
But let's say he does something like that again next week. That's when he gets in trouble. It's the cumulative effect of what he does. It's not a question of whether he does something intentionally and or it's an illegal hit or an unsportsmanlike hit, if I can use that term.
Mhm.
Those kinds of hits are a problem when they ball up, when they start to be something predictable, right? And that's when they become concerning because it becomes a concern for the players as well, that are playing who don't want their career to be interrupted or ended by a hit that, in my opinion, in this case, the hit we're talking about wasn't really necessary because the player was on the way to going down, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I'm not getting into his head. I'm getting into what I saw. What I saw was a player is about to hit the ground. He's being tackled by another player. And then on the way to the ground, he's taking a hit. And that player is a quarterback and he's getting it in the back at the neck. So, you know, optics are everything. And you know what? One thing we've learned about sports, David, and I'm sorry I'm running out of the mouth here. One of the things we've learned about sports lately is it's not what you do, it's what you're not allowed to do. So you're responsible for what you do. It doesn't matter whether you did it on purpose. It doesn't matter whether you have an excuse. You have a responsibility to play safe, to not do something egregious when it comes to causing somebody injury. So again, that's why the criticism I think goes to Simone Lawrence because he does dance on the line a lot.
No, he does. He does, but that's also why Hamilton likes him, right?
Absolutely. That's why the home team loves him, and that's why visiting teams don't like him. It's all the same kettle of fish we see in sports all the time. My bad guy's a good guy. Your bad guy, he's a bad guy.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think Hamilton, they'll figure out a way. They'll figure they, you know, I
Great
just remember the first
organization.
game against Winnipeg last year. They
They
didn't look
lost two
very
games.
good,
They lost their first two games last year, same as they could do this year.
and they ended up going all the way to
They
the Grey
went to the
Cup.
Grey Cup. So, it's an 18 game season. Last year was a 14. So they got more time this year than they did last year. So don't sleep on the Hamilton Tiger Cats, I think is what David and Frank are saying.
No, and I've done that far too often. Not doing that anymore.
30-13 for the Saskatchewan Roughriders over the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And now the last game, of course, is Edmonton and BC. And this one we talked about a little bit. I guess we really enjoyed the quarterbacks. It was a great game. The show was fantastic. And to me, David, we said it before, so I want to end the show the way we started. This is what you do to get the attention of the young fans, the ones that don't come to the game. Get people to come to the game to watch the event, the concert, and then watch the game and go, oh,
The amount of the number of comments I have seen commending the Lions on what they did is all that needs to be said about the direction they're going. And the big one is their owner. because their owner is not. This is not a one-off for him, right? He's not trying to get all the butts and seats for one game. He's trying to do it for the long haul. I was trying to find the quote that he.
He's a fan. He's also a fan of the team, which historically is it's typical of Canadian Football League owners that they're fans.
Yeah, not only that, but it was something about him saying, "I'm not just in it. I'm a fan of the league. I'm trying to make it's all about the league and trying to make the league successful."
Right.
Right? He's not just doing this to make money. He's
Right.
doing it because he wants to see the league do well.
Absolutely. And,
And I
and he's a
think
good
that
guy to do it. He's showing us he can.
yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the quote. We're 100% all in on the CFL. This is a first class league and we're endorsing the heck out of it. The players are incredible athletes.
Wow. We could always talk if we had another hour, we could juxtapose that statement with the MLSC Tannenbaum statement. But not today. Not today. We're out of time, David.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. All I was gonna say was what a striking contrast. The opinions of two owners.
Totally striking. Well, he's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 9 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Candid Frank. See you next time.
Looks like we have more time. Looks like Eduardo's giving us more time.
We did the close. Okay. All right. Do you want to pick up where we left off and get into some trouble?
Maybe
We're going to an Argo game, man.
Off. We talk about Thursday's home, the Argos home opener because we haven't talked about them.
Well, I don't know. Have you heard if they have anything planned special? Anything special to?
So Mike Hogan has been putting out that the shipyard is going to be open again.
Yeah, Pinball Shipyard.
So that's I think
but this time it's going to be in the stadium.
Well, yeah.
Stadium.
So he said here. So this Thursday, the Argos host of Montreal. The pregame festivities start in the North Extended Patio at 6. Food trucks, a DJ, special guests, and $7 beers. I still think, it would have been nice if they had a headliner show or something.
Well, they might still have a headliner.
You know what I bring it to, Frank? The Canadian Open that just happened here. In my neck of the woods, 5 minutes from where I am.
Yeah, I know, down the road.
The amount of attention put on golf this week, I don't know if you've talked about on your other shows, from the Live Tour and everything going on there.
Oh boy, no.
It's brought a buzz to the sport of golf that everybody now also wants to see golf. They haven't had golf in 2 years, and that place was packed. And then the 2 nights they had concerts on the Friday and Saturday night. Friday night was Florida, I should say. That's how his name's pronounced. He's a big star, and a lot of people were there because I saw it all on my Instagram story of all the people that were there. And then the second night, Maroon 5.
Wow.
You know how many people says, I want to go just to watch Maroon 5? Right? That's what I heard from people. I want to go because I want to watch Maroon 5. But then people are like, you know what? I don't mind golf. It's a nice thing. You know what? You don't get to go walking around on a golf course that it costs $70,000 to be a member of.
That's the oldest golf course in Canada.
Yeah. I've always wanted to play.
I've driven by it.
In the area. I've always wanted to play it, and I can't afford it.
I've driven by it many a time, wondering maybe I'll make the turn. I'd like to go see what it's like. Sneak on. I didn't think I'd play there. Just sneak on. Maybe just drive up to the parking lot and get on the putting green and just, Yeah, I played at that golf course.
But like that's what it takes to captivate the audience in some way, right? You got an attentive audience. Guess what? They bring that tournament back a lot earlier. You're going to have the same effect. They had big names there. Rory McIlroy, obviously. Justin Thomas. the guy who won
last year.
the guy who won the Masters was there, right? Like,
Yep.
golf is not, you know what? Like, it's hard. Not a lot of people are into golf. It's, there's a commitment, right?
Oh, come on, you're into it. Stop lying.
Oh, I'm big on. I play golf.
I know. That's why I said that.
So, I think there's a lot to be said about you can learn from other things. A lot of things. Okay, Eduardo's going to give us the boot.
Yeah, why not?
But I think I'm curious to see, will they actually do something to, will the Argos do something to really add to the atmosphere, add to make people want to go to the games, and not just say, we're here, we're, the Argos are here, the CFL's here, come buy tickets.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, David, for this. We already did the close, so let's leave. Okay, Eduardo, take it away.